Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Tracey Deer, and I am a writer, director, showrunner here with my film Beans. And I am so thrilled that we've been able to feature Asia Youngman, brilliant up and coming filmmaker, and one of her short films, This Ink Runs Deep. She is joining me right now, and we're going to have a conversation about her film and hear all about what is going on in her world. Hi, Asia.
Hi, Tracy.
How
Thanks.
are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good, pretty good. This is really exciting for us to have a formal conversation in
Absolutely.
front of the masses.
I know. I feel like we're long overdue for a catch up, but it's nice to finally get a chance to chat and hear what you're up to.
Yeah. Well, I want to hear way more about you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And I want to hear about this film. So this Runs Deep was it's a couple of years ago you made this, right?
2019. Yeah. So it's been a while.
Okay. So how did you come upon this story?
So this Ink Runs Deep came to me from my producers on the project, and at the time they had already pitched the concept to CBC, and they were looking for a director. So it was kind of like my first project where I was just hired to direct, which is really exciting because, I mean, as you know, like when you're kind of first getting started, like you have so many hats on. Like, my first couple projects, I was like editing and shooting things myself and like producing myself and all these things. So it was nice just to be able to come into a project and bring like my own vision and ideas and just be able to focus on directing. So that was really special, but it was a really kind of quick project, I guess, because it came to me, I think in December of 2018, and then we were shooting like beginning of January 2019, and we delivered it to CBC in like March. So just the whole thing was really a quick turnaround, but it was a really special project to be a part of. I kind of realized when I, came up with this project that I didn't really know too much about like our own tattoo practices here in Canada and on Turtle Island. And from just like traveling to different parts of the world, like New Zealand, and learning like how like the Māori do their like taimoko and different tattoo practices like that, it was a really great learning opportunity for me just to see so many of our like indigenous artists around, Canada just revitalizing this practice and just kind of making it their own. And it really kind of plays into, that reclaiming of our identities and our culture. So it was a really beautiful thing to witness and see their work that they're doing.
I have to say that, I mean, that's the part that really got me, identity and belonging. I mean, it's a theme that runs through all of my work, and I got really emotional as people were talking about it and how this practice has brought them back to themselves. I thought it was really, really beautiful. So
So
congratulations, first and foremost. Tell me, where did you go? It looks like you sort of traveled across Canada to access all these people. So how long was the shooting process?
it was about a week in total, which is pretty wild
Okay.
about because
Wow.
yeah, we did a lot of traveling. I can't remember now because it's so long ago, but it might have been like 9 flights in like the span of a week. And we started in Haida Gwaii. I think we flew back to Vancouver, then went to Terrace, and then we flew to the East Coast after that. And then we kind of had a bit of like a hiccup, and we lost someone that we went to interview on the East Coast. So
Oh,
we ended up finding Jana, and bringing her from Nunavut to Vancouver, which worked out, just a last minute thing. So we ended up shooting in Vancouver as well.
amazing. And your approach to speaking with all of them and getting them to open up. What is your approach as a documentary filmmaker? And is it the same for all your projects, or did you take a different approach with this one? Since typically when it's a project we develop ourselves, right, we're building relationships over time and gaining that trust and that access. So how was this different than that process, or was it very much the same?
I think it depends on the individual that I'm interviewing, as opposed to necessarily maybe a project. Like it kind of depends on um, maybe what they're speaking about, like if it's something deeply personal, or if there's, say, like a project I'm working on now, like there are some folks who don't necessarily want their identities revealed on camera, so we've been taking just a very different approach with that. But I just think it's being very upfront and honest and authentic with people, and just genuine, and making sure that they know that you have their best intentions on your mind, and you want to portray them, in the way that they feel proud of. So I think that's what makes documentary so special, but also so challenging, is just because, you're having so much responsibility for, you're usually coming into someone's home, you're getting them to share like some of their deepest, most, personal stories or things that they want to share with you. And you have to just really be careful, I guess, with like what you end up doing with that, right? Because you want to be doing like truthful storytelling, but then you don't want to be making someone feel unhappy with how they're ultimately portrayed in a film. As you know, I mean, you come from a documentary background as well, so I'm sure you know all about this as well. So I think, yeah, I think that's what really separates, doing some of like my narrative projects from doing some of my documentary projects, is it just really depends on the individual, and you want to make sure that you're building that trust and relationship, and it takes a lot of time. It's not just something you can just come into. I feel like sometimes it can take weeks or multiple days of shooting with someone for them to really open up.
And was that your experience with this, or did you do a lot of pre-interviews beforehand?
Yeah, we did some pre-interviews. It was kind of hard because we were traveling to all these different locations, so I unfortunately wasn't able to spend much, time in person with everyone. So it was like phone calls. Sometimes it was just like, we'd be chatting over, whether that was Instagram. I think with Jana, we were chatting a bit on Instagram, and then I was on the phone with like Gregory and Dion, and just trying to, get a sense of what, they wanted to talk about, and sort of the work that they wanted to feature in the project. And that was sort of a struggle for us too, is when we, arrived, like we were like, oh, we have to find someone who's willing to get a tattoo. Like with Nikita, it was easy because it was her husband and they were working on that tattoo for quite a long time. But like with Quiwa, it ended up being me who got the tattoo because we just couldn't find anyone in Haida Gwaii.
No way. Okay, so I mean, one of my questions was going to be, so did you get a tattoo?
Yeah,
Which one is it?
it's just a little cedar sprig. It's on the back of my arm.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, it was just like a last minute thing because I was like, what do I want to get? And I know at the time Gregor was like, oh, I'd love to give you a tattoo, which is like, I was so honored that he wanted to, but I was like, I don't know what I'd want to get at the moment. And luckily another member of our team who's Métis ended up getting this beautiful design by Gregory before we left.
Very cool. Now in the film, they talk a lot about, or some do anyway, about the meaning of the tattoo, and that it marks a moment in one's life and a part of one's story. And I mean, I have one tattoo that I got when I was a teenager, after I'd emerged from a very, very difficult period. And it's true that tattoo reminds me of that time and of my resilience. And my sister is sort of a canvas, and every single one has a story. So I don't know if this is too personal to ask, but I'm wondering what if there was a special meaning attached to what you got in the moment that you were in.
I mean, I guess I knew I wanted something small just because it was such like a last minute thing, but I did want something to signify making that film because it was such a special process. And cedar is like a medicine for our people. So I wanted something that I could just kind of have on me just to be able to hold that memory, many years later. And it still is one of my most, favorite tattoos. And I always think of Quiwa now when I look at it. And yeah, I just think overall that was a really special process for me, just to kind of be meeting all these incredible artists and being welcomed to their homes. And the night that Quiwa gave me my tattoo, she made us like some fresh crab, and we stayed up late just like chatting. And so that's probably my favorite memory of making that film.
Amazing. And what about your choices? What about your artistic choices? There's a lot of people sharing, and I noticed a lot of movement, sort of more organic shot choices, as opposed to the static talking head style. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to decide to shoot all your subjects?
Sure, yeah. Well, it was really a collaboration between me and my cinematographer, Mitch Baxter. And I think, for myself, when I do documentary work, I'm always trying to find something to make, just to do something a little bit differently. And I think with all my projects, like I'm always trying to experiment a little bit and just try something new and just like push myself and do something that's like slightly uncomfortable, just to try it. And so with that, Mitch and I decided that we wanted to do all of the interviews handheld, which was kind of, a bit tricky because, there's moments where maybe, he's doing a long interview, he's like holding the camera, he's getting tired. And then if he's trying to adjust and someone says something that's like really important, we might not get it. So, but I think that kind of added to, the uniqueness of it. And I think there's a moment with Gregory where Mitch is kind of adjusting the camera, but he's kind of pushing in and it's a little bit shaky, but it just really gives it that extra bit of, I don't know, it makes it a bit more cinematic, I guess. And for me, I just wanted it to feel really visceral and that we were just kind of, moving as they're kind of telling us their journeys as well, and just do something a little bit different. And that was sort of our plan with the film. Yeah.
I thought it was very effective because the film has so many different layers of emotion. And emotion, I feel, is it's movement, it's life. And so your choices there really took me on that journey.
Thank you.
So good job.
Thanks. I'm glad it was effective.
It was effective. And then what about for all of the, the extra footage where we got to just get a glimpse into people's lives? How did you make those decisions on what we would see? And was it in collaboration and consultation with the subjects themselves?
Yeah, I would say it was very much a collaboration. Like, I think, for Gregory, he has his like amazing studio in Haida Gwaii. So there's no doubt that we would film there. But whereas like Quiwa, like tattoos in her home, Nikita tattoos in her home, she has like a room set up. So it really depends on the space that they utilize. We ended up doing Dion's at his home as well, just because we didn't really have, because he's teaching on the East Coast, like he didn't really have like a tattoo studio that we could utilize at that moment. So we just really had to like adjust based on, where they would normally tattoo. And then of course, what was also accessible to us. So it was mostly just a collaboration and like what's feasible and what's kind of true to how they would be tattooing.
Well, there was also the personal stuff too, though. So spending some time with the families, spending some time outdoors. So that is something you knew you needed, or how did you decide on that? Because not everyone has those moments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. Like, so with Nikita, like, she has her daughter, and I think because she talks so much about like the next generation and how she's helping youth, like it was sort of a no-brainer that we wanted to show her and her family, that's such an important thing in her life. So her and her partner and their baby just out playing in the snow was just like a really fun scene for us to do. And also because we were there in the winter, like, there's not much we can do in terms of exteriors that didn't involve the snow. So we just decided to do kind of more of a playful scene with them, which was a lot of fun. And then, for Gregory, like he has such a deep and emotional story about his daughter. So
It's
even
heartbreaking.
it is really heartbreaking, and just being, invited into their home, and they still have like the Christmas tree up all year round because it's like they're doing it in honor of his daughter because she loved Christmas, and they have, this beautiful kind of photos of her set up with candles, and just everything in that home was really just to honor his daughter. And even like the clothes he wears, like he was wearing this like Adidas tracksuit, and like he did it to honor his daughter. And so that was just really, an emotional thing to be a part of. And also like you're treading lightly because it's something that's still so raw for that family, and will no doubt be a very raw thing throughout their life. And so just trying to finding the moments to really, that balance, I guess, of like complementing the story, but also not trying to cause further, harm to someone just by bringing up something that's just so traumatic and so sad in their life.
Yeah, definitely. How do you take care of yourself as a filmmaker? You've talked a lot about taking care of your subject matter, and I totally relate to that. And it's a lot of responsibility that you carry. So as a filmmaker, do you prioritize yourself as well and making sure you take care of yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I've been getting a little bit better with it lately. Like I'm trying to set, it's hard as like a freelance artist to do, I don't know about you, I'm sure you're the same way, but like it's hard to turn off your brain at certain moments because like you're always thinking about things, or like maybe it's late in the evening and you're working on things, but I'm trying to set like a 9 to 5-ish schedule for myself. So like evenings, I'm not, I'm not taking work calls, I'm not checking emails or trying not to check emails. Like I'm just taking downtime for myself to like cook and relax and watch TV or like see friends and family. And then weekends as well, I'm trying, besides this weekend, but most weekends I try not to work, just to give myself a bit of like, boundaries, I guess. And even with some of my coworkers, like I'm telling them like, hey, like I'm not available evenings, I'm not available weekends. If I can, I guess it depends what project you're on and what stage you're at with that project. But I think just like being very mindful about how I'm feeling and what I need, and whether that's exercising or like going for a facial or just going to get my nails done or whatever, just like something that makes myself feel good, and just also recognizing that I can talk to other people and friends and family, and just talk about what I'm going through, and I find that's really helpful.
I'm so glad to hear it. That is a lesson that took me way too long to learn. But I am now also practicing many of those things as well. And I think the balance has made a big difference for the work. So
Yeah,
it matters on so many levels. Yeah.
it's a stressful industry, right? Like I feel like sometimes it seems like when you're working on something, it's like it's the most important thing in the world, and like if something wrong happens, it's like, oh no, like this is it, this is the end, this is such a big deal. But I think it's just trying to remember that there's like other more important things going on, and we have to like take care of ourselves, and at the end of the day everything's usually going to work out, even though
Yeah.
time it doesn't seem that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, how have you found self-care? Like what kind of
How,
things
how, how have I found it? It's interesting what you mentioned about being able to turn it off, the brain,
Mhm.
because when you're in a real good creative flow, you just want to roll with it. Or when you're balancing the responsibility or the stresses of it, at least early in my career, I thought about it 24/7. I'd wake up thinking about it, I'd go to bed thinking about it. Um, but it was paralyzing sometimes. So I've gotten much better as well but I still slip. I still slip. But working on those boundaries of when to start, when to stop. I'm a new mom now, and I think it's one of the gifts he has given me is seeing that there's so much more as well. I mean, I'm super passionate about what we do and the stories we have to tell, and like I want to change the world with stories, but my world is also just as important. So that's one of the many gifts that my son has brought into my life, and I'm really grateful for it. Yeah,
That's amazing. That's so beautiful.
thank
Yeah,
you.
family's ultimately the most important thing. It's like something that I've been like very aware of the past few years, especially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is next for you? Since this was 2000, or fill us in on what you've been up to since This Ink Runs Deep, and what you're up to moving forward.
So I've really, ever since I started filmmaking, I've always really wanted to work in narrative. And so I think for me, like after This Ink Runs Deep, I was like, okay, I'm going to do a narrative project next. And so I wrote and directed a short film called Hatha in 2020. And then since then, I did a short film called Nahaha Iku, which we shot last summer. And so that was my second short narrative project. And then I've also done started to get a little bit into television. I did an episode of Odd Squad Mobile Unit in 2020, working on a feature documentary right now with ESPN. So we are just kind of wrapping up production and starting post-production, which is exciting.
Cool.
And then I have 3 television series that are in early development. So
Oh
hopefully
my God, that's
one of
amazing.
them goes forward. Yeah, I'm really trying to get into like episodic directing and television writing. So we'll see what happens next, but crossing my fingers.
And the television development projects, yeah, are you looking at drama? Are you looking at comedy? Is it across the board?
They vary. Two of them are comedy dramas. Like I love that genre of just like that blend of both things. And then the other one's sort of this like supernatural crime drama. So very
Okay.
different, but it's nice to explore that right now. I think for myself as like emerging filmmaker, I'm still so curious about so many different genres, and I don't want to necessarily like, be known for doing one type of thing. I want to kind of try as many things as I can and just figure out, exactly where I'm the most excited about, I guess, in terms of genres and the types of stories that I want to do.
Yeah.
That's been really fun to kind of jump from different things and experiment a little bit.
And what do you think of narrative in relation, like in comparison to documentary?
I love it so much. I just, yeah, I love working with actors. I love the process of like, you have a script, whether you've written it or not, and you're kind of just like envisioning, you have this vision in your head, and then you're working with all these amazing artists who just like help you make that vision come to life. And it's not always the way exactly you imagine it. And usually it's better, or it just love that process of being able to like build something from a script and bring it to life and just see what actors will do with that character. And I've really been enjoying it. But at the same time, I still think I'll always have a love for documentary, and it's just very different, really. Like I think
Super different.
yeah, and even with
Yeah.
doc right now, like doing a feature doc, because like I've realized it's so much work after you kind of shot everything, because you're trying to like transcribe all these interviews and like find the story and build it out. And versus with narrative, like you're doing usually a lot of that work, beforehand and prep and whatnot. So yeah, I enjoy both, but I think right now I'm really excited about kind of exploring a bit more narrative projects.
Yeah. I mean, it's a similar trajectory, I think, to what I took as well. The beginning of
Mhm.
my career was 10 years in documentary, and I love it. I love it still to my very core. But once I started in narrative, the amount of control one has in narrative, and I think ultimately most directors, like, we're control freaks. It's what
Mhm.
makes us good at our job. But what people don't often know about documentary is we have very little control. So you become instinctual, and you have to sort of move with where the story's going, or how your subjects are feeling, or what they want to share or don't want to share. So you don't really have a ton of control. You're
Mhm.
gifted all of it, and then, as you said, in post, you build.
Right. Yeah.
So once I got into narrative, the ability to redo something if it wasn't right, the ability to choose every single minute detail that will help the story. Oh my God, it was so fun.
Yeah.
And even though we are working with bigger teams and the pressure's greater in terms of, it's a lot more expensive to do narrative. So the pressure is there, but strangely enough, and I don't know if it's the same for you, but um, I feel the pressure in documentary is much greater, because these are real people. These are their lives. These are their emotions. It's a massive responsibility. So in some ways, you might look at a fiction set and go, "Oh my God, look at all of that." But I find it easier, actually. Where do you sit with that?
It's tough to say, because I feel like leading up to doing like a fiction project, I'm so much more stressed, just because, there's so many things on your mind, and like I feel a greater pressure. But I also agree with you, where it's almost like when you're working with real people and you're telling their story and making sure that they're hopefully happy and proud of that. There's that greater pressure almost later on, I feel like after you've
Yeah.
kind of done the interview and you're kind of putting their story together in the edit. So I think, yeah, for me, it's more pressure up front for like fiction, and then more pressure, I think, kind of afterwards for documentary.
Yep. Yep. It is there regardless. Exactly.
So Tracey, I'd love to hear a bit more about what inspired you to create Beans and kind of where the story came from, and maybe a little bit about the process of making the film.
Yeah, actually, Beans is the ultimate passion project for me. I wanted to become a filmmaker ever since I was 12 years old. And I was also 12 years old when I lived through the Oka crisis. And so even back then, my dream was one day when I grow up and I become a filmmaker, I want to tell this story from the point of view of a child, from the point of view and the perspective of in the way that I lived it. So it's really been 30 years in the making. And it's been the scariest project for me to take on, to really dig back into what was the most traumatic time of my life. And I did not expect the amount of internal resistance that I did have to doing that. So the process was long, it was hard, but in the end, there's been great healing for me to finally put that story out there and feel seen.
Thanks, Tracey. I'm also curious too about like your casting process, and like how did you know, kind of when you're sort of portraying such like a personal story in your life, that you wanted to cast Gowan Dio and all these amazing other indigenous, you know, up and coming actors who are doing some incredible work now. So what was that casting process like for you?
So I don't know what it's like for you, but when I'm casting for narrative, it's a feeling that I'm looking to have. I know the essence of these characters. And so when I am in the casting process, it's not one specific thing that the actor is doing, or and specifically for this film, since it is semi-autobiographical and I have a little sister, there's a little sister in the movie, there was an energy I was looking for. And Gowan Dio, I actually met her for the first time on And with an E. And even then, within the first hour of her audition process for that project, in the back of my mind, I was feeling and sensing Beans in her. But then it was its own casting sort of process for our project, since it was much bigger than And with an E, and where the character would need to go was darker even. So a lot of conversations with all of them, a lot of openness, and really respecting both the kids and their parents on what they were comfortable with, and everything that they were nervous about or uncomfortable with. We worked to solve those issues. And so the casting process really defined, I think, the shoot afterwards, because we had talked about everything, came up with plans for all of it, all of the difficult scenes we had to do in the movie. We all went in, I think we were all nervous, but I don't think we were fearful. And that was really important to me.
And what are you hoping audiences take away when they watch the film?
So I'm sorry for the big pause. Maybe you can ask me that question again, and I'll give you an answer right after. It's a tough one. It's kind of tough. It's easy but tough at the same time. Go ahead.
So what are you hoping that audiences take away from when they watch the film?
So I have many goals with the film. That was such a painful time in my life, and so many of our kids are growing up in a society that does not welcome them. It is not safe. We're not respected. And I want that to change. I want our country to be a place that allows for the dreams of of everyone to be possible. Yeah, I felt so worthless after that summer, and I had to work so hard to regain my sense of self-worth. And not all of our people are able to do that. There's so much pain, there's so much sadness. And so there's so much work to do. And my hope is that audiences leave the film engaged and motivated to go out into the world and make it better for our people.
Great. Thanks for sharing that, Tracey.
Welcome. It's been such a pleasure, Asia.
Bye.
Cannot wait to see what's going on next, and the best of luck for all of these projects you have coming.
Thanks so much, Tracey. Thank you for including me in my project in this.
Absolutely.